We now know 18 of the participants in this year's G1 Climax. We also know the brackets for the qualification tournaments. We're going to take a good long look at those. Plus, we review New Japan Seoul, take a look at what's ahead, a little bit of all together, plus your questions. With Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. This is Speaking of Strong Style. Welcome to Speaking of Strong Style, where we discuss the news, issues, and events surrounding New Japan Pro Wrestling. We finally have a little bit more information on the G1 than we had the last time we talked. We now know who is automatically in. We know who's going to be wrestling to get in. There were some surprises for sure here, Jeremy. We have a couple of people from outside of New Japan. We were wondering how much room there was. There's room for two, as it turns out, and we'll be talking about those. But overall, as we look toward this tournament, I'm excited, but I am also surprised at the way they were divided up. What was your first impression of the announcement from this past Sunday on the G1 participants?
First one was like, okay, I can do this. This is good bracketing. The play-in tournament makes sense. I mean, we were talking about Tanahashi didn't seem like a lock to be in the brackets or in the blocks, and he wasn't. He's in the play-in. I like all of it. I'm here for it, man. I am ready for this G1. I like the lineups. I like the layout. I think there's intrigue. I haven't seen a whole lot of Jake Lee, so I get to get on the band of hating him like everyone else does. But I'm going to do it authentically, apparently, and watch the matches as they happen, and then tell you all that you are all right, or be the crazy person that says, I don't know what you all hate about him. He's perfectly cromulent to me.
I don't quite understand the hate for Jake Lee that we've been hearing on this. Now, is he Kazuchika Okada? Absolutely friggin' not. But he's very different. I think he brings something interesting. I think he's oddly charismatic, emphasis on the oddly. And so I think this could work out. But I do understand he's not going to be, when you watch him, you'll see he's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, just in the way he works a match. But I feel like there's something oddly charismatic about the guy. So I am interested in seeing him in this kind of format, facing someone different every night, not just butting heads with Naito. And having this style of match night in, night out. This is going to tell me a lot about whether Jake Lee is actually a major player, or if it's, what can I say, if a lot of people are correct about him and that he's not. But I'm willing to give him a shot.
We need people to shake things up, right? And Jake Lee and Takeshita are there to just kind of upset the apple cart and make it so that the people that you think would have the line of sight towards winning the G1 maybe have an obstacle or two in their way. These are the X factors, if you will. And they're totally fine. They're totally fine X factors. We were complaining about Takeshita being in this IWGP title eliminator challenge to never get a shot at the IWGP title. Now he's in the G1 for a shot at the IWGP title, which, you know what? If you want to go the hard route to get a shot at the title one more time, got to respect the storyline reason. They're like, hey, if I got to go through 10 other guys in order to get the shot, that's what I'm going to do. I'm like, respect. I like it. Seems a little babyface to me, Like that doesn't seem like the heel route, and I don't know what he's going to be when he gets here. I imagine he's going to be a heel, but he could be a babyface. It could just be a completely different reaction here.
Yeah, that really doesn't have to play into it too much if they choose not to. They could do it either way. I'm looking forward to the matches, frankly. I just think Takeshita is a very, very talented dude. And to throw him in here with some of the guys, I'm looking forward to seeing fresh matchups. We've talked about it over and over again. We asked for fresh matchups. We're getting a few.
Both of them are on the cusp of making it to post-block play. When you look at these blocks, do you think that one or both of them are going to have the traditional, oh, you came so close, but foiled right at the very end? Or do you think one of them will actually make it through?
I think at least one, perhaps both, will get through. At least one, though. Yeah, I feel pretty strongly about that. And by the way, hello to USVA guy and Colin, who's here joining us. We appreciate you guys joining us live. Flaming Shark is here. So let's get some reaction to this. So I mentioned, let's make it formal here. Jake Lee from Noah is part of the G1 tournament. We're going to go over the rest of the participants here in a little bit. And Konosuke Takeshita from AEW is the other non-New Japan person who has been entered in as automatic quality. They're not in the play-in tournaments. They are in the tournament, in the G1. So we have that. Flaming Shark is saying that Takeshita is an awesome wrestler. He spices up what I think is the weaker in-ring block. That's very true. This is a little bit tilted. And we're going to get nonetheless.
The biggest thing about Takeshita, right, is that there was no real connection to New Japan Pro Wrestling with him. And now there is. Now we've created the roots, and now we can have different conversations about what Takeshita brings to his interactions with New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that's what I like most of all about that.
Yeah, it's intriguing because he was DDT guy, right? That was most of what he was doing. It's funny. There are several Japanese YouTubers that don't have to do with wrestling that I watch. It's just like life in Japan type of stuff. And one of them was a guy that does different experiences. So he'll say, I worked in a Japanese character cafe for a day, or I did, like all that kind of stuff. And one day he says, I tried to be a Japanese pro wrestler. And I thought, okay, well, I got to click on this and see what the hell it is. And they brought him down to Korakuen Hall, and he trained with Takeshita in DDT. This was not too long before Takeshita went over to AEW. So I see this and I said, oh my God, they found somebody really good for him to train with. And then, they did the usual thing where they showed him how tough it is, and they chopped him, and they, did all this stuff. And they were nice to him and all. And then they did kind of a mini match, not at a show or something, where he could learn show what he learned and that stuff. And Takeshita really came off nice and came off as a good guy. And they talked about how DDT is like this, almost a mix of parodying pro wrestling and being pro wrestling at the same time. They went into that. And it was funny though, Jeremy, I was watching that clip, and Takeshita's there training this dude. And in the background is Kenta Kobashi. And all this, and I'm just sitting there. It says, I'll bet Connor has, and it was Connor, Colin. Yeah, it was Connor. And I was watching this thing. It says, I'll bet he has no idea that one of the 10 greatest of all time is standing a few feet away from, not because he's a jerk or anything. Connor was actually very, and he treated the whole thing with respect. But it was entertaining. It was Takeshita. And so now Takeshita goes from DDT and people's YouTube pages to AEW and now to the G1. So I'm excited to see that. And then Shark just says Chris Brooks introduced him to Takeshita, if I remember correctly. So there you go. It was entertaining. It was entertaining to watch. And I think he's going to really throw some interesting things at us. But where do we want to start? With the A block participants? Or if you have any other thoughts, please.
I got this queued up for you. I got some notes as we're going through these things. But honestly, this just feels very traditional, a back to basics kind of G1. You got the 2 blocks. You're going to have a little bit more meat at the end of the tournament in the post play. And when I was looking at it, I realized there's no A block, B block interaction until the finals. At one point I thought that there was, but no, it's you are fighting all throughout that A block. So you can lose to a guy in the block play, beat him in the post bracket, and get your win back. And there's a lot of that psychology that we're going to be walking through here as we're going through this and trying to figure it out. Honestly, for the next 6 weeks, there's going to be a lot of G1 conversation. Lot of G1 conversation. You might get sick of us. I might get sick of G1 conversation, but we are gonna be seeing this through. And I got the profiles all queued up for you, and we'll just walk them through.
Go ahead and bring it up. Shark says, honestly, I think this is a near perfect format in theory. We'll see how it goes, though. Yeah, I'm excited about it, too. I think they have added some really interesting variables to go with a version of the more traditional G1. I think everyone's happy to see the 2 blocks back, because I don't think 4 really worked as well as they hoped it would. But there are twists and turns. So in A block, we have, for now, Shota Umino. Now, Jeremy, we know that Shota Umino is hurt at the moment. He was pulled off of New Japan Soul. He was off of Altogether, has a fractured hip, as they said, and also some back problems there. I think a slip disc in his back, or a herniated, or a slip disc, right?
Yes.
He says he's going to be back in time for the G1. A fractured hip doesn't sound like something that heals in a
12 weeks.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know.
And so like 12 weeks, and so in 5 weeks, this guy is supposed to take how many bumps in how many matches?
I'm no announcement yet, but I'm skeptical of a lot of things with this. After that, we have Tetsuya Naito.
Is that our angle alert, and that's how a couple of guys get their night off during the later part of the tournament?
that could be. I mean, that could be, because
I hate to angle alert and take the wind out of the sails going to G1 and like talk about the possibility of Shota Umino not being in this thing and all that, but I don't know, man. You don't go on Twitter and tell everyone you have an injury that requires at least 12 weeks of rest and rehabilitation without surgery or anything, and then say you're going to be back in 5 weeks for the hardest tournament. And, it's like...
not all this is passing the smell test to me. Not all this is passing the smell test.
I mean...
But they did pull them off shows, and they don't do that very much.
No.
New Japan did pull them off shows, and that's not something that they do traditionally. Not saying never, but it's highly unusual. After him, we have Tetsuya Naito, who could perhaps be the world heavyweight champion by the time this thing starts. He, of course, is facing Jon Moxley at Forbidden Door between now and the beginning of the G1. Either way, if he goes in as champion, the champion is always a strong contender but doesn't quite win. That's kind of the whole psychology of the tournament. Or this guy's one of the major players and certainly expected to be one of the favorites if he's not the champion. So this is an important guy in this block without question.
Here's how much of a favorite Tetsuya Naito is. This is his 15th consecutive entry. He is the second longest tenured contestant in the G1 this year. He has won it 3 times in 2013 and 2017 and 2023. It's hard to bet against this guy is what New Japan is trying to tell you.
Yes, and Colin wants to mention one thing. Can we just do this and get this out of the way, Jeremy? He says, can we please at some point talk about why Abima hates most of the world when it comes to wrestling shows? I know. Here's the thing, Colin. Abima is absurdly not available in a lot of places that watch all these pay-per-views. Good news is, Colin, I'm not sure Altogether is happening anymore, so it might not be a thing anymore. As every alliance in the history of wrestling has shown, it collapses within a few months, and so there's no word on that. But honestly, I don't think you have to worry about it going forward.
If we're going to do the sidebar, I think Altogether actually served its purpose. They laid out the few dates that they needed for the beginning of 2024 where they were all going to cooperate. They got their dates done. And the minute those dates were done, everyone started doing their cooperation with the stateside promotions and went their separate ways. We got WWE over with Noah now, right? And we got New Japan and AEW. After Gabe Kidd was on that show and there was a WWE promo, I feel like that was pretty much going to be it for now.
Yeah, and we talked about that. Naito ended up beating Jake Lee again, but we know now that that's not the end of the story because Jake is coming to G1, so that will continue on. And Shark just says he needs to try to get his revenge on Naito. Exactly. There'll be something about that.
Jake Lee beating Naito in the G1 seems like a very possible scenario at this point.
And of course, Colin mentioned that we're going to get AJ Styles and Naomichi Marufuji over in Noah, which was great news and is a jolt in the arm that Noah could use. All right. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked here, but Tetsuya Naito,
back to the regular.
Either a favorite or the champion going in.
Absolutely. As we have Shota Umino, and we got Shingo.
Shingo Takagi. So, interesting thing here with this block, of course, Shingo recently, the never open weight champion, lost it to HENARE, and one of those things where it feels like a title loss in order to clear the decks, maybe for someone to make a run in this tournament. But in the A block, there's so many people that are serious contenders in only 3 spots. So this is very interesting to me that Shingo is over here, but we're going to get Shingo versus Naito, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Shingo versus Naito seems very curious. There's a lot of LIJ versus LIJ happening, and it's very friendly, but it may not be friendly after the G1 ends. And, the roll call and making sure that the roll call happened was such a big deal in 2023 and the beginning of 2024. So, yes, it could be very, very interesting with the dynamic of Naito and Shingo Takagi. I do think Takagi is a guy that might have Naito's number in the G1 with very little consequence of doing that, because you could get Naito into post block play, but you don't necessarily have to.
And and that's something the USVA guy mentioned there, that the Altogether shows are indeed for charity. That's also true. And keep in mind, the main reason for that alliance, that UJPW, is a lobbying group to work with the government, if they manage to hold everything together. But the idea of it is mainly that it's a lobbying group that occasionally does charity shows. That's what it actually is. So all the current and former LIJ heavyweights are in the A block except for Yota Tsuji, and I think they have plans for Yota. So we'll get to that. Here's another former LIJ guy, SANADA, of course, who went through block play last year undefeated, and here he is in a very, very stacked A block for this tournament. So here it is, SANADA, the leader of just 5 guys.
You can't rule him out. You honestly cannot rule out SANADA as someone going to the post block play or winning the whole thing, given last year him being champion, and they still want to protect the guy to some extent. Like, there is mid-cardness to him. He just lost to Finlay for the global champion, but you do the story, the guy doesn't win the first match when he comes back from a long injury and all that kind of thing. So he's on the cusp. He's one of those guys that can fight for that last spot, but you never want to rule out Evil, and you never want to rule out SANADA at this point.
And who else? Great Okan. Yes, all hail. So Great Okan is here. Of course, the King of Pro Wrestling. That's not a title that's particularly protected in the G1. So, I think he's going to be in here mostly to get a couple of key wins that'll probably end up being important, but I don't expect him to be in the mix. But we're going to talk about, again, we're going to really preview this hard going in, but that's just my initial impression of Great Okan over on this side. King of Pro Wrestling is not a title they particularly worried about protecting in the G1, not in the same way that the Never in the World title are protected, where they're looking for challengers.
No, they're not. What do you think his career personal best in the G1 was up to this point? The Great Okan.
Well, this is only his 5th tournament, right? So I don't
think
he's
it's his 4th tournament.
His 4th tournament. Oh, okay. Oh, is that what that's saying down there in the bottom in Japanese? Pardon me.
No, I have all the details.
You just got all the stuff.
I did data.
Has he scored? Has he scored 8 points in a tournament yet?
He has. He's gone 4-5 at his personal best. In 2021, he won 44% of his matches. So he is lower end. He's the guy to do jobs and to take out people who are on rolls. I could see him ending a run for Shota Umino at some point if Shota ends up running through and staying healthy or such. Like, he is going to be a roadblock for some of the baby faces.
All right. Let's see. Zack Sabre Jr. This is another guy that we think will have a lot to do with this tournament here in this year. I think anyway, that this is one of the favorites. I believe that they're working on moving him up to top Gaijin. When I saw that he was in the A block, I thought, oh boy, that's a lot of people for him to get past. And so it's making me question that a little bit. We'll see as we get a little closer. I think we're going to know more as we get closer to the tournament about what they think about Zach.
Here's my scenario. I think Zach goes and wins the block. And I think Naito and the other person who plays does a play-in, and Naito loses. So Naito and Zach never face each other again in the post-block play, and the next time they would face each other. There is a way to do it where they are in the same block. They do end up doing the Wrestle Kingdom and only doing one match between now and then. But that finger is my choice.
All right, who's next?
Got Gabe Kidd.
So, I think he's going to be just the Chaos Goblin in this whole thing. So, a guy who could possibly beat someone and, other than that, take losses and probably be his own worst enemy, like the War Dogs tend to be in this type of tournament.
Here's the thing about Gabe Kidd. I was talking with somebody about the matchups and the schedule, and Gabe Kidd and Shota Umino have a match very, very early on in the G1 tournament. We're talking like night 2 or 3. There's a not zero chance that Gabe Kidd storyline takes Shota Umino out of this tournament and uses that as heat. And even though he has no eventual like pathway to winning the whole thing, you can then set up Gabe Kidd and Shota Umino for Wrestle Kingdom or for whatever feud that you want to do up to that point, which is probably one of the hottest things that you could do with both of those guys leading into it. Gabe Kidd is going to be an X factor in this thing. He is going to matter in this tournament. He is going to have fantastic matches, but I don't think that he is going to make it past block play.
All right. Who's next?
All right, let's see what we got next.
Evil. All right. Once again, I don't see this guy making the post block play thing right here, but just a guy everyone's going to have to get past, and he will probably threaten to. My guess is he'll be in the mix on the last day at the very least. But there are some major contenders here that this A block has a lot of guys that you would think, a lot more than 3 that you would think
really want to bet against Evil.
I have a feeling he'll be in there on the very last day, but I don't think he necessarily has to move on, but he very well could. I mean, you know how they do with House Torture, so yeah.
Okay, let's see. Evil on the last night.
Don't get into this too deep. We got 6 weeks.
Evil faces Shota Umino on the last night.
Or will he?
That's it. Or will he? Either way, I think Shota Umino and Evil will be a very consequential match on the last night. Evil will be in play. I could honestly see Evil being the top heel, making it in the A block, with Jake Lee being the guy that cost Naito from winning the A block outright and getting
We've got a lot of weeks to figure all that
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I know you don't love it, but I love just thinking this stuff out.
No, I know.
I'm working through it with you. I'm literally
got a lot of episodes to fill.
Jake
Lee from Noah is going to be over here. And like you said, you're right about one thing, though, is that Jake is here to go get Naito. And what I'm interested in is seeing him wrestle the other guys as much as anything else. I've seen him wrestle Naito a bunch of times. The story's continuing. It's fine. It'll be good when he gets there, but that's his story. There's no question about that. But I am curious to see Jake wrestle some of the other guys like Zach, like SANADA, and it'll be interesting to see him in there against the new people.
Yeah, I am very much excited to see what Jake Lee does as the X factor in here. Both for the conversation, honestly, because the conversation can be delicious. Everyone is going to have a take about suddenly being an expert on Jake Lee. And I'm going to tell you all now, I'm not an expert on Jake Lee. I'm coming into this cold, and I'm super excited to have this perspective of barely watching any Jake Lee whatsoever. Shota's not okay. So,
although Shark makes a good point there, Evil getting thrown a forfeit would be peak shithousery, as we like to say in soccer. That would be the one of the ways that he could get through. Yeah, well, I mean, like Colin's asking, so if Umino can't make it, will they put in a lucky loser from the qualifier? They have said zero about this. As far as New Japan is concerned, Shota, they're in storyline at least, they are taking Shota's word that he's going to be back for the G1. So there are no plans to replace him at this point. I mean, they're all over it behind the scenes, but publicly right now, they still think that Shota's in this tournament.
I'll put my tinfoil hat on right now. This is 5 weeks out from the G1. If he ends up being out from this tournament, they have plenty of time to rebook this tournament organically and fix the matchups in order to make it so that they have what they want lined up and it works out just fine. This is not like the Akira situation in the Best of the Super Juniors, where it happened in the middle of the tournament and all of a sudden they just had a mess at the very end that they just kind of had to work through, including with the champion. If this is all just some complex plan that they have, and Shota's not in the tournament halfway through, and they're forfeiting matches, they can totally plan that. I totally have faith that Geto can work through all of these things. I'm not saying this is happening. I'm not speculating, but 12-week injury and starting 5 weeks in and having some of those hard matchups right in the beginning, there's something to that. And I am going to be very curious in those first couple weeks about the longevity of some of these people in the tournament.
All right. So after Jake, we have
playing.
So they were flat out cheeky with this one. So if you look on the left side of this bracket, so this is the B block qualifier. Of course, there's one spot left that is not determined yet, and there are 6 people who are eligible for it. And it is a situation where you have a first round matchup, and that's going to be Toru Yano versus Bolton Oleg, the winner facing Tanahashi. So we have the never open weight 6-man champions taking up the entire half of this block, block qualifier. On the other side, TJP will face Satoshi Kojima, with the winner facing Taichi. And so after that, once we boil that down, the two remaining will face one another for that last spot. So it'll either be Yano or Oleg moving on to face Tanahashi. So the never openweight 6-man champions all have to fight each other. Then we have what seems like TJP. I have a hard time believing he'd lose to Kojima here. And then we're down to TJP and Taichi. Intriguing there. This could go a lot of ways, Jeremy. Sentimentally, strictly sentimentally, for me, I'm rooting for the Holy Emperor Taichi. I love the guy. I think he's just doing terrific the last couple of years. I would like to see him in the G1. The TJP story is intriguing. He has named himself captain of United Empire. There are a couple of guys from United Empire that are already in this tournament. It'd be a little awkward if he didn't make it, but that could be part of the story, right? On the other side, you have the upstart young lion. I don't think he's ready for a G1. I think you put him in when he's truly ready. I don't think he's quite ripe yet. He's improving rapidly, but the G1 is a pretty high bar to climb over, and putting Bolton in the G1 at this stage might not be the best. Plus, they don't like to beat him. They don't like to beat him. And I don't think he's going to win the thing just because I don't think he's enough of a box office draw to get there yet. If you're not going to have him go on a tear through the tournament, I don't think they're ready for that. Remember, they don't do that with young people in this way. Then I don't think you put him in the tournament at all, because you certainly don't want him to go like 3-6 when they've done such a good job of protecting him. He doesn't even lose matches where he's the only young lion in it. You know, they have Honma do it, or they have somebody else. So I think Oleg might lose to Tanahashi here. I think that could be a way it could go. But I do think he's going to beat Toru Yano. I don't think it's going to be a thing where they just get rid of him right away. So I could see this coming down to like Tanahashi and either TJP or Taichi, and then it's kind of up in the air after that. Any one of those 3 you could make a case for. It's amazing to think Tanahashi, Taichi, one of them is not going to be in the thing at all.
So you have to take in the calculus of the dates that they have to work, the schedule, the challenge, the longevity, and what the talent can do. I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and I went and looked and just saw how many dates and how many matches each of these people have worked in 2024. So TJP has worked 53 dates this year, all for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Satoshi Kojima has worked 22 dates. 4 of those were for New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, he's been mostly an MLW guy this year.
Yeah, most of those were MLW. He's only had those 4 matches. Taichi has only had 48 matches, and they've all been New Japan. Toru Yano has had 47 dates, all for New Japan. Hiroshi Tanhashi, you want to take a guess how many he's had?
That's an interesting question. I don't know how many has he had.
Hiroshi Tanahashi has had 49 dates, and he's had 47 of them for New Japan.
He does feel like he's been on just about every show. Yeah.
Bolton Oleg has had 53 dates, all for New Japan.
Working hard.
This guy has been working the schedule, and he has been locked in. When I saw that, I was like, it's hard to rule him out if he is the healthiest guy and he can go. Maybe there is building that aura to it and putting him through his paces, especially if he's the guy. I don't want to rule out TJP, but I have a hard time believing TJP is going to beat Taichi in a 1-to-1 match on any given Sunday kind of scenario. Yeah. So if it came down to Taichi and Hiroshi Tanahashi, I'm taking Taichi. If it came down to Taichi and Bolton Oleg, I'm kind of taking Bolton Oleg.
You really think they're going to put him in the tournament and then have him lose a few times?
I think that they have a plan for him. Like I've always been beating the drum on, and you can lose a bunch of times if you're going to have a major personality / character shift coming, heel turn, whatever. I'm too nice to the guy and I lost because I was a dipshit.
You're going to predict Boltin Oleg's heel turn
forever.
Every single show until you're finally right.
Waiting.
And then you're going to say, I told you, everybody.
No. I'm not this is going to tell you. I'm just telling you.
The Nostradamus of pro wrestling.
This is going to make me so happy when it happens. And I don't care if everyone's going to say, yeah, you've been saying it for 5 years. Like, I don't care. Like, when it happens, and it's going to be one of the best things in pro wrestling. And I am so excited for bad guy Boltin.
Okay, so let's get some comments here before I move on, because this is an interesting block. This is a really interesting block. Shark is saying, I would like Oleg to beat Tana and lose in the finals of the qualifier personally. That's interesting, but he might fall to Tana. Yeah, I'd like to see him at least beat Yano, though. Me too. I mean, but Colin is saying you can't have a G1 without Yano. But I think we might be heading that way. Let's see what we got here. USVA guy says the problem is not the G1 itself. Problem is the heat that certain executives will receive for pushing New Japan talent to fly back and forth for AEW shows so much. This injury has people talking. All right.
This injury has people talking.
That Flaming Shark says, pretty sure this is his G1 retirement, Colin. He's thinking about Yano here, I think. He can work his style, obviously, but eventually the older guys have to step aside. That could be right. And Shark says, 5 years later, Oleg turns, and Jeremy will tell us all he was right. And but if you look at this, again, I don't want to break this down too much. We got weeks and weeks to go and we don't have all the information. We don't know who the qualifier is. We don't know who the champion is. So we're really on weak sauce here. But think about this. Only 3 guys, Jeremy, can come out of the A block and move on in this tournament. And if you were going to just lay out this tournament back when we thought 8 people were going through, right? When we thought it maybe was the format of last year. Well, you've got Umino would certainly be someone you think about before he got hurt. They're like, oh, yeah, he could definitely move on. But Naito, Shingo, SANADA, who went through block play undefeated last year. Let's not forget that. So you can't really dismiss that and just think all of a sudden he's going to go 50-50 this year. Probably not, right? Zach, and then Jake Lee, who's the guest, and Evil, who is at least protected in these because they want to have the heel up there, at least the threat of the heel screwing everything up. There are 4 or 5 guys that you might think could make an 8-person quarterfinals, and only 3 of them are getting through. It's remarkable that some of these guys aren't going to get out of block play when you would think that. I mean, you could say Naito, Shingo, and Zach, right? Yeah, but not SANADA, not Jake, maybe not, but this is a pretty loaded block is all I'm saying right here. And some people that you would think would get through to the quarterfinals or semifinals, they're not going any further than this.
This is New Japan's way of cream of the cropping. It's like telling you what their top talent is and rising them and reestablishing the hierarchy. That's what they do with New Japan G1 every year. They have these matches, and then you kind of slowly reset the hierarchy based off of who beats who, making sure that you understand the stable dynamics. The third in the stable is going to lose to the number 1 of another stable unless there's like funky dynamics or, a storyline in play. All of these things are happening. We're going to see the Zack Sabre Jr. rise to the top. We're going to make sure that Naito stays strong. But that third one, the Takagi, the SANADA, or Evil, it could be one of the 3. And honestly, because of the status of all of them, I wouldn't mind any of them.
Yeah, and Shark has it here. He says, Shingo, I think, will threaten winning the G1 right after losing his belt, and we thought so too. Zach feels like a good pick. We felt good about Zach. The third guy could be almost anyone. And looking at this, yeah. I mean, especially if Tanahashi comes out. I don't expect Tanahashi to win, but, you never know when they're going to do that whole Cinderella run or something like that. It's a really wide open block. They could go so many different ways with the 3 people moving on here. So Shark does say Naito, Shingo, and Zach. It's probably my guess. I'm leaning that way as well. Again, I want to see the qualifier. I feel like there's going to be helpful information with that once we know who's coming out of that. Who's going to be the 10th man, so to speak. So
someone's going to get credibility for costing Shingo post block play, but somebody's going to get the clout for that. If you already have one LIJ going in from the block, I feel like you just can't put 2 LIJ people in there. And I don't know. Like, if you
it's
had
the most
Shingo
protected,
versus Naito,
that is the most protected group in the entire company.
I know. So putting them both against each other in the first match of post-block play just seems like potentially teasing either one of them against each other in 2 matches in the G1. You're guaranteed 1 match between Naito and Takagi. Do you want to do a second match? Like, if you do a second match, are you going to do a third? Like, I feel like this is a one and done kind of scenario, not put them both in the post-block play, especially because
they don't have to face each other in post-block play. They just have to
yes, but there's so much like talent and there's so much top level people that if you're focusing on that going to it, I feel like you're missing opportunities to establish credibility for other guys that don't necessarily have the cachet that Shingo does.
Flaming Shark is saying one of the 2 qualifiers making the playoffs feels like a very New Japan story, so who knows? And he said, and this is why I think you really can't dismiss it. I think some of these qualifiers are going to be in it to the very end, at least, because he said it was established the importance of the playoffs for future years if they stick to the format. By playoffs, he meant the play-in tournament to get there. You do have to put the thing over, and in some ways. Well, you don't have to, but you probably should. But it is a way to do it. So I think these qualifiers are going to matter. I don't think the qualifier is going to be someone that goes in there and then goes 2-7.
I think one of the qualifiers will probably cost a guy that you think is, a lock to make it a post block. But if that guy hadn't been in the thing, they would have made it. Like, they don't go home run with these things. They go like double or a single of consequence. Like, and then they'll create the matches afterwards. But it's clever trickery. It's not in your face kind of booking that's just like, hey, we're hitting you over the head with this is why this is happening.
Let's go to the B block. This one's a little more straightforward, I think. We have the first person in there, El Phantasmo, right? Isn't that the first name we got for the graphic?
Goto.
No, it's Hiroki Goto. So there it is. All right. Well, we'll talk about them as they come up. Hiroki Goto, he's in it every year. 17th tournament. My goodness. This is a guy, he's the 2008 winner, like they mention every year. Just a guy who is going to provide good matches night after night after night. And I'm glad he's in. I'm glad he's not in the play-in tournament, so to speak, because I think Hiroki Goto adds something to this. There's another guy like that is in the play-in. We'll talk about it. But I'm glad Goto's playing. I'm glad he's in the tournament. I think he's going to just give us good matches, which is what it needs.
Him being in there and Yoshihashi not made me think that it wasn't the 17th entry and it's not being a winner in 2008, because Tanahashi was a winner at previous points as well. But I think it was him having such a great showing in the New Japan Cup in storyline wise that got him this, because you can't go to the finals of the New Japan Cup and then be put in the play-in for the G1. It's like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So this guy was kind of a lock, and he's reliable. He's a mainstay, and he may be hurting in the middle of this tournament, but he's one of those guys that you count on to see through.
Up next, there's El Phantasmo. El Phantasmo's had a rough year, by God. All of his friends have left him. He's there all by himself now. And I am curious to see what kind of tournament he has and where things go for him in the future, because he doesn't have his tag team anymore. Hikuleo has left for WWE, we believe, and doesn't really have a storyline going forward, although not in any way, shape, or form coincidence that his last match of the tournament is against David Finlay. I think there is still some story to be told there. So we'll see how this turns out. Could be a spoiler role for Phantasmo this year.
He has probably got one of the most intriguing pathways of the entire tournament. I don't see him winning past block play. But at the same time, I think the El Phantasmo that we have at the beginning of the tournament will be vastly different than the one that ends this tournament and heads into August and September. What that means and what that transformation is, a broken heart is very volatile. So I'm not saying I know anything, but I do just kind of look at him and think, you are going to be one of the big X factors on the B block.
All right, let's take a look at who's next. Yota Tsuji. Now, this is a guy that is the only member of LIJ on this side of it. Everybody else is over there and on the other end of it. And a guy that I think is poised for a run. And just looking over at the B block, I think we need to keep our eye on this dude.
Yep. I think I would bank more on Yota Tsuji making it to both post-block play than I would Shingo Takagi, frankly speaking.
That's an interesting point, Jeremy. If you look at this tournament, and the blocks and the way they're distributed and where guys are, Yota Tsuji is probably the most likely. Like if you were just putting Vegas odds, the lowest odds, like the shortest odds on someone making the playoffs, probably Tsuji this year. I don't see how this B block goes without him going through.
Yeah, very safe bet to go forward. He is 50-50, and he had one of the best showings of the rookies last year in the Reiwa. I don't want to bet against him. I don't think he's winning, but I do think that him having a prominent role in Wrestle Kingdom and having a great showing in the G1, being in those matches, those singles matches on the last couple of nights of the tournament, he's one of those guys that you want to have in that role.
All right, next. Yuya Uemura. Now, this is a guy we're still trying to figure out what they want to do with him. It has been overall a fairly rough year for Uemura, I would say, both in ring and character wise. And I think he's regressed a little bit in some ways. So I think this tournament's going to go a long way. He needs to have good matches, Jeremy. I think the most important thing Uemura could do is try to steal the show every night. I think that's going to end up being important for this guy.
He's so doomed. He is going to be eating so many pins in this tournament.
He needs to have good matches, though.
Oh,
so that's why those good matches are going to be more important than ever. He needs to have good ones.
This is going to be his seasoning. I don't know if he's really had that seasoning yet in New Japan. This is his first G1. He's had these matches here or there, and he's been brought in, and he's been kind of in the just five guys stable, and he lost his hair in the match with Yota Tsuji. He needs to just have a crazy good tournament, because this guy, unless he's poised to surprise everyone and end up going to post-block play, like he could have a Cinderella story and they could completely change the narrative on him. Entirely possible. It is 1000% possible, and they could surprise everyone with this. But I do think that this is the put you through your paces and you're going to eat some pins, but you better have great matches on the way, my friend.
After him, Jeff Cobb, the television champion. This is his sixth tournament. Somebody you always have to take seriously in this, just because of the way he works, the type of wrestler he is. He's a good guy to have in a tournament like this. You can have him believably beat anyone, but he could also be that monster that someone overcomes on the way to their greatest triumph. So having a guy like Cobb in this thing is very handy. And of course, he's one of the best workers to fill that role. Bad Luck Fale has done it in past years, where it's just like the most physically imposing guy who can beat the champion, but also might lose to a mid-card guy who just has to have that one extra win. Mm-hmm. He's great for that. And I'm looking forward to seeing Cobb in some of these matchups.
Jeff Cobb is delightful with how close he gets to getting to the next round without actually getting to the next round. He went 8-1 in 2021, didn't make it to the next round. Last year, he got busted out of the post-block play by a draw at the end of the count-out draw. Greatest thing ever. Is this the year that he goes to post-block play? I'm going to tell you, Steven, I don't think so. I don't think he goes to post-block play again. But it is going to be a fantastic story to see how that happens.
After that, we have HENARE. Now, the never Openweight champion. This is a guy who is, it's his third tournament, and easiest prediction will be that he's going to set a new personal best in points scored, because I do feel like he has been absolutely elevated since his other appearances here. Don't know if he's getting out of block play, but I think progress for him will just be having a winning record, in it on the last day type of situation when he hasn't been in the past, really.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what HENARE does. he's got a couple matchups with a couple of guys that he's very familiar with from last year. And, I don't expect him to go post-block play, but he's going to be protected this year with that never Openweight title. And you want to look at that whole block of people and think, who might be the guy to be set up to be challenging for that never title when all said and done.
Yeah, he and this next man here, global champion David Finlay, you're looking more for who do they lose to, because it's going to set up a lot of the second half of the year in major title matches. Right. Finlay, though, leader of the Bullet Club, they always want the leader of the Bullet Club to look fairly strong. So I think he's about to have a pretty good tournament. He's been having good matches, just had another one on Sunday. So this could be a big deal for Finlay to wrestle well, keep doing his job. And then as the leader of Bullet Club, I think they're going to protect him.
I would be shocked if he didn't make it to post-block play. I would even go so far as to say it feels very likely that he's going to win the entire block outright and even get a bye. But that may not be the case because they do like to just put him in there to get the heat and wrestle a match to take out your favorites. So some way, shape, or form, I see this guy moving on. And I think that they are building a lot around him. And when this tournament is over, people will still be talking about David Finlay.
That's going to be an important thing for them. Ren Narita. And so he's in here too. Another guy that, because of the House of Torture style, just like Evil, he could beat anyone because he might cheat to do it. There could be a thing with a ref bump. He clobbers somebody with the push-up bar and beats him. So not someone you could ever sleep on. I would not expect him to move into the post-season play in this one, so to speak, get to the playoffs. But I do think it's a guy that could be the trap game for some of the favorites as they make their way through. This could be a loss, a surprising loss to take, because Narita could beat anyone with the cheating. And I think that's really going to be his role here, is spoiling people.
This is the Gabe Kidd Chaos Goblin of the B block. He is going to be the one that comes in there and just, he is going to have a disqualification just because he's messing people up too much. He could beat Jeff Cobb and set up a TV title match later on. There are a lot of things here that this guy can do to wreck perfectly good scenarios about who can go forward. The Chaos Goblin, Ren Narita.
There you go. Konosuke Takeshita. Now, AEW representative here, and he is coming over, and I'm really excited about seeing him in some of these matches, and a guy that I think is going to score a lot of points. I do believe that they are going to give him a lot. Partially that's because of the AEW situation, where AEW seems to be with the upper hand, let's say, as far as this relationship goes. So I do not see Takeshita coming in and having a losing record. I think he's going to, at the very least, be part of the final day festivities as far as being mathematically in it. And I would not be surprised at all if this guy moved on. That's just kind of seems to be the way this thing goes with New Japan and AEW. But again, no complaints. This guy's fabulous. And so it should be some terrific action.
AEW definitely likes to use New Japan to elevate their people. I can totally see him moving on to post-block play. Having a Finlay versus Takeshita match, for example, totally would not surprise me. Two of them, in fact, going back to back on that one. Those are level matches that you can do. I am really looking forward to what Takeshita does in this G1 tournament. I remember watching him on AEW Dark and realized, this guy's got something. And just watching him progress but feel hamstrung in AEW, I feel like I'm going to watch this guy cut loose. And I don't know, are we going to get this guy reminds me of Kota Ibushi kind of stuff? Are we going to get comparisons of, people that just came out of nowhere and you're like, oh, hey, this guy reminds me of this? I don't know, but there's going to be a lot of people with all of a sudden a brand new hot take about just how good Takeshita is. Based off of what he does in the G1.
All right. And moving on from that, we have the qualifying tournament. So, again, two sides, 6 people. On one end, Yoshihashi and Chase Owens. Now, that's been kind of a tag team rivalry as they fought over the IWGP tag team titles this past year. They'll be wrestling each other for the right to face Tomohiro Ishii. On the other side of it, you will have Callum Newman, who's story all year has been, can I get to the G1 facing Yujiro Takahashi in the first round with a chance to face Kenta? This is an intriguing one here as well. So, to be honest, I don't think Yoshihashi Chase Owens matters all that much because I think Ishii is going to the A Block qualifier finals. It just feels like that's where that's going to end up. Now, this leans toward a Callum Newman Ishii rematch in that A Block qualifying finals. The last time we saw this match, it kind of blew everybody's doors off. It was fantastic. And not that we were all shocked, but Newman really stepped up and meshed well with Ishii. Of all the potential A Block qualifying tournament finals, Ishii versus Newman, I think, is the most intriguing match. I hope we get it. And from there, I hope that Ishii goes through because no one, and I mean no one, has better G1 Climax matches than Tomohiro Ishii. And if his body can hold up, I say you put him in the tournament until the wheels fall off the cart because he is one of the greatest G1 wrestlers in history. And so I am rooting for Ishii versus Newman, and I'm rooting for Ishii to go through, and we get to see all those great Ishii G1 matches this year. That's my thought. Where do you see this going?
I think Tomohiro Ishii will have a role in this A Block qualifier. I'm not sure who he faces, though. He could face Kenta. He could face Callum Newman. Kenta has had 45 dates this year in New Japan, 39 for New Japan. Yoshihashi has had 44 dates, 43 for New Japan. Chase Owens has also had 44 dates, 41 for New Japan. Ishii has had 46 dates this year, 44 of them for New Japan. Yujiro Takahashi has had 55 dates, and Callum Newman has also had 55 dates, all for New Japan.
Oh, Yujiro, 55 dates, about 110 bumps.
Oh, man. I have had conversations with people that have suggested to me, unfortunately, that Ishii is probably not physically able to see through a full G1 schedule this year.
Oh, really? Oh,
and his role will most likely be to elevate somebody into that role going into it. And so if that was the case, and all of that being true, and I'm not saying anything other than just people who may know a thing or two have just kind of said, hey, listen, like, temper your expectation on exactly how much Tomohiro Ishii can do. He's really banged up right now. And so you kind of think about that, and you don't want to set up a tournament that, like, has so many injuries that you can't see it through. Like, one is great, 2 or 3, then you start wondering why it was booked this way. This is a perfect vehicle for Callum Newman to get that win 7 months later over Tomohiro Ishii. They had the face-off after the match that they had, where they kind of eyeballed each other, and they were setting up that these two were going to be seeing each other very, very soon. So if I'm gonna say anybody, I'm gonna do the wild flailing shot in the dark guess and say that Callum Newman is the guy. And yes, I am predicting that we might get both Callum Newman and Bolton Oleg in the G1 this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. But
the key that's why I was like, Taichi is a 50-50 with Bolton Oleg, frankly speaking.
The key to this is you could always have, if Ishii can go, you put Ishii in because the quality of matches is just beyond the pale. So if he's able to go, if he can do the tournament, it needs to be Ishii. If he can't, then you get the triumphant story of Callum Newman. Would also be intriguing, again, I go back to this, if Newman makes it and TJP doesn't, all of this undercurrent within United Empire gets a little... The soup gets a little thicker, doesn't it? And so there's story to be told there. And if you want to talk about guys whose body can't physically do it, Kenta, again, I keep going back because Kenta was one of the very best in the world in his Noah days. I would say one of the 5 best on planet Earth for most of his run with Noah. And then just to see how his body's betrayed him over the last few years, it's tough to watch. But
you know who the safest guy in this bracket is? Yoshihashi.
The safest guy? What do you mean?
He's the guy that could do all the dates. He could have perfectly fine matches. He's not going to blow you away. He's not a risk and reward like Callum Newman. He's not the opposite risk and reward in Tomohiro Ishii. He's not the injury concern of how he can go with Kenta, and he's not Yujiro and he's not Chase. Frankly speaking, Yoshihashi could be a perfectly fine entrant into this thing.
But what's the risk with Newman? Hasn't he proven himself that he can wrestle with any of these guys?
He has, but they may not be confident he's there yet. Just like you have that like fear with Bolton Oleg, right? Like, is he ready this year? Is the story that he didn't quite get there and he fights even harder to get into it next year? Or is this the year that he gets in? Those are kind of the things that you take in. I am leaning Newman. I believe that it's possible that they get real spicy and do both Bolton and Newman. But if they don't, I'm leaning Yoshihashi and Taichi as the guys that would be the safer picks in both of the qualifiers as to who could go and be that last guy.
Let's take a look at some of these comments here. Flaming Shark says Tsuji, Takeshita, and Finlay is his thought for the B block playoffs. But there's some really interesting people in the B play-in. I'd love to see ELP make a run fresh off the loss of Tawa Tonga, which is a good name for him. Shark says, I agree. The seeding going to Finlay number 1 with Tsuji and Takeshita fighting to get to Finlay. Kind of lean in that direction as well.
Tsuji and Takeshita, just think Tsuji and Takeshita together. It's just like, ooh.
I think I agree with Shark, though I think that's definitely the way it could go. He mentions that Takeshita's match with Ospreay was one of the best of the year. Obviously, Will is Will, but my hype for Takeshita is pretty high. He's a hell of an athlete and an exciting guy in the ring there. So, and yeah, the other thing, too, that he mentioned, too, Newman being in the qualifier. Well, he says to get to Naito's block, but Naito's in the other block. So, this is the A block qualifier. Pardon me, isn't it? Yeah, pardon me. Okay, yeah, that's interesting too, because Callum wants to get a shot at Naito, so that would put him in there with Naito. Yeah, sorry, I was backwards on that. So yeah, that's part of the storyline too, is that Naito and Newman have a thing going here a little bit, but so does Ishii. So maybe Newman gets past Ishii and then crashes into Naito. And then he says, yeah, if Ishii is still ready to go, we want Ishii. I wouldn't blame him if he wants to call it a career, though. Well, the G1's a tough gig, so. But a lot of us are hoping that he does get in, just because I really think he's probably the best G1 wrestler ever. So, all right, so that's the tournament, and we'll be taking a look now. These first round matchups: the Yoshihashi and Chase, Callum Newman and Yujiro, Bolton and Yano, and then TJP and Kojima. Those will be this week. So by the time we come back with next week's show, we will know who has moved past that, and we'll be aware of who is going into the last of the tournament qualifiers there. We'll be talking about that next week. So by the time we come back, we'll have our final 4 in each A block qualifier. And then in very early July, the 3rd and the 5th, we'll be back at Korakuen Hall for 2 more shows to determine the final 2 places in the G1 tournament. So there's a bit of a gap right there, actually, though. I think after the 23rd, no more shows until July 3rd. Forbidden Door is kind of stuck in the middle there, so we'll have plenty to talk about. But as far as pure New Japan shows go, there's a bit of a gap between this Sunday and then the rest of this tournament.
So the first night, wow. First night's so exciting. Just thinking about all this stuff, I get chills, man.
Well, we're going to be going over a lot of it, and we're going to have a big thing. We'll have a big preview going. We're going to talk about. We're going to have this thing covered like a cheese on a pizza, I tell you. And
slow your roll, Finestone. We got plenty of time to talk about.
Yeah, and we've got more stuff to talk about this week because we had NJPW Seoul, we had New Japan Seoul, we had a little bit of all together. So let's take a look at that Seoul card from Sunday, because it did have an impact on what we saw here in the G1. Colin's saying, imagine if Shingo wins the Owen plus the G1. That would be a heck of a run for Shingo. I'm not sure. He's not winning the Owen. He's not winning the Owen. In fact, I'm not sure he's advancing in the Owen, looking at who he's facing. Here we go. So New Japan Seoul was a show that was
top to bottom or bottom to top.
Let's go main event backwards. We'll do that, because that's the important stuff here. So this was at the Hokkaido Prefectural Sports Center, same building as All Together the previous night. It outdrew All Together by a couple thousand. By a couple thousand? No, by a couple hundred, excuse me. Neither one of them drew huge. Let's just be honest there, but not terrible. 2,370 showed up for Seoul. I got to feel like having All Together there the night before kind of hurt a little bit of there, but again, not a bad number for Sapporo, but that it wasn't a blowaway thing. On the other hand, it was just like I said, the night before they had all together in the same place. So let's take a look at the main event, which was a steel cage match between El Desperado and Sho for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. And at first we were getting comedy skits here where Sho tried to sneak foreign objects into the cage in his pants, but he was caught. They kept pulling 100 different things out of there. Sho went after the mask from Despe and ripped it up early, but we did not get the voluntary unmasking that Desperado does sometimes, which is a cool thing. It's almost unique to Desperado. I don't know anybody else that does that, where he just says, "You want to rip my mask off? Fine, screw you." He just takes it off. He's done it a couple of times, but not here. Sho didn't quite get that honor. A lot of Desperado selling in this one, of course, which they had to do given the circumstances. That was the whole thing, is to put heat on it. But of course, it's House of Torture. So Red Shoes was bumped. House of Torture came down. Kojima, Tanahashi, and Bolton tried to help him out, but were beaten down at first. House of Torture threw a whole bunch of chairs into the ring, but then the babyfaces rallied. On the outside of the ring, they ran off the rest of the House of Torture. Inside the ring, Desperado decides, I'm not even going to use the chairs that House of Torture threw in. He tossed them out of there, saying that's not the way he wanted to win it. He ended up hitting a pinche driver and the pinche loco and pinned Sho clean. This really felt like they were moving on from Sho as the champion. I mean, he might get a rematch down the roads, somewhere, but this felt like Desperado putting this thing in a cage so that he could get Sho alone. Once he had him alone, he did not want to use any of the chairs or anything else. Didn't use a whole lot of weapons. And I want to beat this guy clean and get it over with. That's what this felt like. And after it was over with, pretty good match, by the way. Again, if they would let Sho wrestle, he's a really good wrestler. But the House of Torture gimmick is the House of Torture gimmick. Afterwards, he called out Doki and told Doki that he had all kinds of respect for him, all kinds of history with him, and he wanted Doki to be his first challenger. That'll be coming up pretty soon there. I think part of those Cork and Hall shows in
I think it's on the July 5th card. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So good performance by both guys. I thought Sho was good here in his role and wrestled a fine match. Desperado's nice story. Good guys win in the end.
This wasn't angle of the year. This wasn't match of the year. This was wrapping a bow on the first half of Desperado's arc, if you will, for New Japan. He won the title. He lost the title. He had to win the best of the Super Juniors. He had to vanquish Sho. He had to prove it to himself. He had to prove it to everybody else that he was the best in the world. And he has done so. And he can call his shots now. Hiromu has moved on to, six-man action, at least for the time being. Seems like, there is a new chapter turn in the junior heavyweight division. And while this wasn't an amazing match, I wasn't blown away. I feel like they're starting to go to the well in the cage when they haven't done it all that much. Like they're trying to spark stuff with using a cage, and you don't need to. There's a lot to this that besides throwing the chairs at the cage itself, that Desperado did, a lot of the things that you did in this match, you could have done without the cage. Yeah. And so was it really necessary? I don't know. Did it add an element of excitement to pump the crowd and get them there? Maybe, sure. And that's at the end of the day what you want to do. But you may not be getting more out of your crowd and your audience if you're using gimmicks when you have talent like Sho and Desperado in there. And, doing a blow-off, I guess, but the blow-off was to a disqualification match, and I don't even remember if they had a match with each other in the Best of the Super Juniors. I don't think they did. But it's just like, was a steel cage necessary? Sure, I guess. Did it really feel like it needed to be there when all said and done? Nah. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like, I'm just happy that everything is right in the world. Desperado is the champion again. He is clearly on top, and House of Torture's de-emphasis is continuing.
Sharks, this is a good show match. Who is this and what do they do with our New Japan? Yeah, they actually let him wrestle for a little bit. Dunstan was on the other side of that, the fence, the cage. He said, I couldn't get into this match. Maybe it's because when I look at House of Torture show, I just can't watch. So there you go. Well, yeah, I don't know if you're going to have to in a major way. In that sense, I think that there are changes coming for that group. So that was the main event. And before that, we had the global heavyweight title match. That is David Finlay defending against SANADA. And the story here is that Finlay is righting all of the wrongs, the perceived wrongs from the first half of the year, and that he had unfinished business with SANADA. This was mostly Finlay doing heel work and a long selling run for SANADA. And SANADA, of course, got his stuff in, made his big comeback, but it was the overkill after 25 minutes that got the win. I thought it was a really good match. I thought both of them showed up and worked well. Finlay's demons are now exorcised from the early 2024, and in storyline, it's all to make sure that he's a major threat for the G1, and I thought it accomplished that mission.
How many psychological problems does David Finlay have that he has to exercise all the demons and let everyone know and blah, blah, blah.
Right, all of his wrongs.
He's in charge in the backstage comments. Blah. Who's in charge of Bullet Club? David Finlay's in charge of Bullet Club. Like, he rages around and just goes crazy and just makes everyone scared of David Finlay. David Finlay in the ring is fine. He's great. I am enjoying what David Finlay is doing, but I feel like unless he has the IWGP title, there is a limit to just how ferocious and dangerous you can consider David Finlay, because they have not been able to make the global title on par with the IWGP as they want to. Like this to me cemented Finlay as the number one heel in the promotion, and it cemented to me that SANADA is upper mid card and not a guy challenging for the title anymore. And regardless of whether they want to do the angle, if he just came back from an injury and the guy loses in the first match from injury, all that notwithstanding, with the result of this match, as good as it was, told me that Finlay was cream of the crop and SANADA was not.
And it's the thing where this was the most predictable match on the whole show, really. There's really no way SANADA was going to win that global title from Finlay with this current circumstances in New Japan. Sharks, this is a match with simultaneously really good work. It still made me want to fall asleep. And just because it had an air of inevitability to it, I think is what he's saying. Shark also says, number one, SANADA haters back in action with SANADA back and doing things. He also says Finlay's doing well enough for now, but we'll see where it goes. He's going to have a strong G1. It's up to him to make it work. Dunstan said this match had two guys that are good, just not must-see guys in the promotion. It's probably fair. It's probably also why it was not the main event. So I think they knew that as well, and that you have to kind of give the fans something else after that. So that's not going to be the end here. And they also, keep in mind, one of the Tanahashi's 10 points, and one of the things that the company is apparently working on, is building up these titles. This global title is not yet established. It doesn't have an identity. We don't really know what it means, so to speak, where it falls in the hierarchy. They said it would take 12 to 18 months to get all that set up, and that seems about right for the pace of New Japan title matches to really define something. Mm-hmm. So early days of that, but it is fair to say that the fans aren't going to get all amped up about a global title match when we really don't know what a global title match means or what winning it means. And
I wonder what the timeline would have been if they'd never merged the Intercontinental and the IWGP.
Crazy decision that was. That just if there was one thing you could really go back and do again from a title standpoint, there are other things if you go back and do them again.
Free-framed, that's the moment.
It didn't make sense then, and nothing that's happened since has made me change my mind that it didn't make sense. Like, it just was a weird thing to do. After that, before that, we had a never open-weight title rematch between Shingo Takagi and HENARE. Now at Dominion, these two fought their way to a double knockout. So we ran it back here at New Japan Seoul. And this was another BMF match between these two. This time, HENARE was able to overcome, and he got his first New Japan Championship. This was very good again. And these two really mesh well. Shingo's a major G1 contender, doesn't need the belt, as you've mentioned before. You feel like he should be going after the world title or nothing at all. I still think he's a decent never champion, but as a BMF title, I think HENARE needs it more. So I think this is the right decision. And Shingo can go into the G1 now unencumbered with a belt and really make a run at it, which is, I think, what they're trying to do. Neat moment there after he finally won his first New Japan title, singles title. He does the haka he does a haka in the match, and that was pretty badass. So I really enjoyed it. Happy for HENARE. I'm happy for his push. I'm happy that his work is being rewarded. I'm happy that he has recovered from that pretty scary injury he had back in February. So I had good vibes from this one. Shingo was great in putting him over, and now HENARE can take that never openweight title and continue to make it the BMF belt that it probably should be.
3 titles for United Empire now, by my count, right?
Yeah. They're on, except for TJP.
Yikes. This was a long time coming for HENARE. I think he really changed his fortune after the G1 last year with that C block showing, where he was a guy that was considered like, well, yeah, he's good, but he's not as good as the rest of these guys. And he was as good as the rest of those guys, and he showed it unequivocally last year in that G1 tournament. And, he got incredibly messed up during that cage match warfare with the United Empire and the War Dogs back in February. This might have happened earlier if that hadn't happened, but I cannot say that the outcome feels right, and it feels like a fresh, like HENARE's not young, but a fresh young direction for the Never title.
Yeah. And let's get to some of these comments here because we have some good ones out there. Some of these relate to the junior heavyweight title match, some of the other things. But Shark says Despi has more edge than Liger. Yeah, definitely. Liger was about as pure babyface as you're going to get. Despi has a little bit of crankiness to him. I'm getting Liger-esque star energy from Desperado these days, so I think the junior title will get a lot more main events going forward, especially after Dominion. He's very popular. And, Liger could headline shows, and people love Despi. So you even hear... It's an interesting thing, Jeremy. Ever notice when you hear the little strains of that guitar in the beginning of his in the mariachi type of style guitar, there's kind of a gasp in the crowd. Like people are excited that
with the rattles.
Not everybody gets that reaction. The
guitar chords and the rattles are very, very iconic for him.
Yeah. Colin said, by the way, this is one of his matches of the year, to be honest. Let's see. And Shark just says that Hiromu is a superstar, but I don't quite get that same vibe from him. I'll disagree with Shark a little bit on that one respectfully there. I think Hiromu is the Liger of this generation. With Desperado, I've been saying it's more of the Black Tiger type of thing, the Eddie Guerrero end of it, who did have that edge against Liger. Dunstan said this match was good, but it wasn't needed. HENARE should have won a Dominion, and he said, I felt like it was a bait to sell more tickets to this show.
I thought
the only thing I'll mention to that, Dunstan, is all the matches are baked to sell tickets. That's what they're for.
It was one last effort to protect Shingo before he dropped the title. Like you really had to get through Shingo to do this. I didn't think it was necessary. I agree with you, Dunstan, but I understand why they did it because Shingo is going to be one of their main event guys, and so it couldn't just be a one and done. It had to be a trial to win this belt from him.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. But they could have, you're right, they could have done it at Dominion. It still would have worked. But yeah, this protects Shingo a little bit more. Shark says HENARE deserves the Never title, and Shingo needs to be global and world champion.
Shingo and Finlay for the global title is a fantastic match to do. They haven't met up since, last year in August, I think. So, or October. I think he won the Never title off of Finlay back in October. So they could run it back at Wrestle Kingdom, but, there are a lot of main event decisions to be made over the next 6 weeks.
And by the way, Colin mentions one thing, that there was a damn YouTube ad that came in there. If we're in the middle of a point and an ad pops up, we can't see those. So Jeremy and I don't know when those things are inserted by the YouTube gods. So if there is a point we were in the middle of making, we can try to briefly summarize it when you come back. If we're in the middle of something, just let us know in the comments when that happens live, and we'll try to fix that. So sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. We've tried. There's nothing we can do about those. Okay, after that, we had the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title match. Now, I mentioned that the global title match was pretty much readable in that we knew that Finlay was going to retain. This was another one I felt pretty strongly that we were going to see another retention. And the question is, how good would the match be? It was pretty damn good. This was Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney defending the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles against TMDK, Kosei Fujita and Robbie Eagles in this case. Almost 18 minutes. So they went a while. Lots of late near falls. Very exciting match, I thought, right here. And the story, though, was that Robbie Eagles took the murderous Drilla Killer on the outside on the mats onto the floor and was taken out of the match. That left Kosei Fujita with Connors and Maloney. And the end of the match was mostly as could Fujita somehow valiantly fight his way through this. Well, he did as well as he possibly could, but he was eventually overwhelmed. This was all about taking a valiant loss, fighting to the very end and defiantly as best he could. And it took all three finishers to do it, Jeremy. If you notice, they had to give Fujita the Drilla Killer. Then Clark had to give him the no chaser. Then they had to hit full clip on him to get the kid down, but he did stay down. And the story being that Connors and Maloney have cleaned out the junior heavyweight division now. Robbie Eagles, if you notice, right after this match, said that he was taking bookings in the United States for a few months, so he's not going to be in Japan for a while.
You spent some time with Tony Khan.
with the G1 tournament coming up, Fujita is probably going to get either some time off or he's going to go work for some other people in there too and get some other matches. So not much to be done with that title for a little while. So I'm fine with keeping it on Connors and Maloney, who are proving to be excellent junior heavyweight tag champions.
Yeah, I cannot sing the praises of Connors and Maloney being the anchor to the entire junior heavyweight tag division right now. They're fantastic. I think Robbie Eagles will be spending some time with the Ring of Honor probably over the next few months. And a lot of these guys can get rest and rehab because the G1 is going to be putting them on pace to have a couple weeks off and let the heavyweights do the heavy lifting for a while. And
what good stuff. And like I said, this was all about the valiant defeat for Fujita. So if there's a way to make sometimes losing with valor can be better than getting a win. And really, there are all kinds of examples of baby faces losing valiantly in ways that I think this helped Fujita because one, he was terrific in the match and then just showed that they needed that much to finally take him down and that he fought that hard with his partner laid out on the floor. That was the real story of this match is that Fujita is a warrior.
It's the pure psychology of seeing someone lose to make you realize, wow, I wanted to see them win and I want to see them win next time. That's all it was. And, you do it. The better you do it, the better the result the next time.
Shark says he could see Clark and Drilla being a heavyweight tag team down the road at some point. Yes. So maybe so. Yeah. And they're establishing themselves as the new aces after Catch 2-2. So that is part of it. We had a title change before that, and that was the never Openweight 6-man titles. These titles are kind of a background prop in another story that is going on. And what we had here was you saw to begin with, LIJ won the titles by Tsuji beating Hiroshi Tanhashi. So then they came back, and this time Bolton was upset that he lost the titles, and we saw a little bit of emotion from him. He got up in Tsuji's face about it, wanted an immediate rematch, got the immediate rematch. When Bolton got the immediate rematch, he grabbed a hold of Bushi, splattered him with the kamikaze, and beat him and took those titles back. So as much as the first title change was about Yota Tsuji getting his old mentor in the ring and beating him, this one was about Bolton getting his revenge and saying that, no, I'm going to impose my will on this now. The titles themselves are more props as they're building these guys toward their G1 runs. And, Bushi here, the least protected guy in LIJ, did the job. So, again, I don't think the point of this is necessarily that Oleg, Yano, and Tanahashi are some unbeatable team the way, Ishii, Tanahashi, and Okada were. Mm-hmm. That's not the story here. But this was about Oleg imposing his will, and now we're going into this bracket, this play-in bracket, where the three champions have to face each other. So we'll see how that turns out there. But this is about making Bolton.
So, if it were any one of these three people on the B Block qualifier, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Toru Yano, and Bolton Oleg, which one of them, if they were to make the qualifier, would you want to face Yota Tsuji at some point in the P block.
Mm-hmm. Well,
we have the Callum Newman and Ishii tees on one end. So we have the building Bolton Oleg and Yota Tsuji tees on the other. And I can't help but think that they are teasing something in that P block matchup at some point.
Keep in mind, Tanahashi and Tsuji still has that backstory. Tsuji just got his first win. Tanahashi, the story could be that Tanahashi can't let that fester. He's got to go and get that back from his old young lion too. So there's story to be told either way.
I don't know. I feel like when I saw that Yota Tsuji match and he pinned Tanahashi, I felt like the entire point of that was that Yota Tsuji pins Tanahashi and gets that clout before Tanahashi doesn't have the clout to give of getting away of Yota Tsuji getting a pin over him. Doing that immediately and then flipping the titles back right afterwards just showed me that they were just trying to elevate Yota Tsuji and put him in the fan position of just a little bit higher than he was previous, to make him feel like some type of mountain to climb for even like the Bolton face-off or whatnot. I think the Tanahashi aspect, the purpose was served. We'll probably get a singles match down the line between them. Obviously, that could end up being the Wrestle Kingdom match, is Yota Tsuji and Tanahashi, quite frankly. But I think right now the purpose was get the pin on him, show that you have surpassed him, so that you can artificially inflate his status within the promotion going into the G1.
We'll see. I'm not convinced Tanahashi is willing to just put other people over for the rest of the way out. I'm not sure I'm not sure Tanahashi's in his
just some guy though.
He's
like
not.
Yota Tsuji, the cornerstone of the promotion, like Shota Umino, Yota Tsuji, those like at least those two to me are the ones that they're looking at like, hey, like you're the cream of the crop right now. Even more so than Ren and Yuya. You know, it's like I can see Tanahashi totally doing business for those two.
The build up to Oleg, this is from Flaming Shark, to being a proper roster member is so good. I'm so invested in his eventual mega push that's coming. And
it's coming.
Yeah. Shargo says, I think Tana misses. This is his prediction. I think Tana misses the G1 this year, and next year's G1 is built around it being his last. We'll see how it goes. When you're president, you can do a lot of things. Tetsuya Naito and Titan. Now, before this, we've kind of covered the newsworthy stuff, so we're going to get through the rest of this card fairly quick, just because the rest of it are mostly just basic preview tag stuff. So this was Naito and Titan on one side against Taka Michinoku and Yuya Uemura. This is a pretty standard preview tag match. Titan beat Taka Michinoku. And frankly, you're just not going to get a lot of effort out of Tetsuya Naito in these matches, and we didn't.
Not much to add.
Shota Umino was supposed to team up with Bishamon, and of course he was pulled from this. So the one thing that I thought was interesting and that I appreciated, by the way, was that they had Dick Togo, Yujiro Takahashi, and Evil on the other side. So one of those guys is going to have to sit out. And they chose Yujiro to sit out. So we got a much better match because Dick Togo is a better wrestler than Yujiro is. And the Bishamon against Evil and Dick Togo wasn't half bad. I'm not trying to make it into a classic, but it was good. And Togo, of course, did the job there to the Shoto. Much appreciated, New Japan, for putting Togo in there and letting him get the match instead of Yujiro. Thanks.
Third match from the top, from the bottom, just right where it needed to be. It was. Yeah. You don't need to go out of your way to watch this, honestly, but if you're watching it, your time won't be wasted.
Yeah, wasn't bad. And then we had Doki and Taichi against Ren Narita and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. Knowing what we know now, that Doki was going to be the guy called out by Desperado at the end of the show, this was the setup for it. Doki got the win on Yoshinobu Kanemaru, so he got the victory, looked strong, so that he could be called out by the champion, and that match makes even more sense than it already did. So Doki getting a nice victory here. It feels like Doki has indeed been elevated. Like it's no in a one-on-one match with Kanemaru, you would expect Doki to win now. I'm not convinced that was the case 6 months or a year ago. He does feel like he has moved up a rung or two in that junior heavyweight ladder.
Yeah, not only that, it felt like Taichi's return match, and they spent a lot of time just trying to get him back with the crowd and connecting with the crowd, and there was a lot of that. A lot of the time of this match was dedicated to the pre-show, just connecting just five guys with the crowd and just, getting them over, which I thought was really, really interesting. But yeah, this was all a vehicle to reestablish just 5 guys and put them forth going forward. Because Taichi's like, I'm going to be I'll do the G1, I'll do whatever. You think I'm old, I'm not old, I can still do this. So, like, he's making his case, and honestly, he's always a good guy in the G1.
Yeah, he is. Speaking of guys making their return, Francesco Akira returned from his knee injury in the match before that. So that was Newman, Akira, Great-O-Khan, Jeff Cobb, and TJP against Katsuya Murashima, Satoshi Kojima, Shoma Kato, Tomoaki Honma, and Tomohiro Ishii. This was all about getting everyone got a little bit of shine in here, but this is all about Akira getting back on the horse after being out for a little while there. Thankfully, and not as long as we feared initially when he had the knee injury. So we're glad he's back. He got the win over Young Lion, just a rehab victory, and we moved on from there. But this was just about everybody stretching their legs, warming up the crowd.
Obligatory Kojima returned so that it wasn't completely out of the loop that he was in the qualifier for one of the G1 spots. He hasn't been around, but hey, look, we got to make sure he does his appearance.
And then we had the debuts of 2 new young lions here. So we have Masatora Yasuda and Daiki Nagai. And we talked a little bit about these guys' backgrounds last week. Yasuda is a second-generation guy, Nagai formerly in the military in Japan. And I tell you what, they went to the 10-minute draw, of course, like they almost always do. And they've gone to 2 more, by the way, over the course of this week in the house shows that are not going to be on NJPW World. They've just been doing 10-minute draws against one another. Very basic stuff, of course. This was Yasuda's hometown. He's from the area. And it was mostly chain wrestling with a few submissions, a few strikes at the end. They only went off the ropes one time in a 10-minute draw, Jeremy, and that was for a Yasuda drop kick. But I tell you what, I thought both showed good facial expressions, which is usually the last thing to go. Like, it's something that Bolton didn't start doing until very recently. And but both of them have expressive faces. I thought when they sold well, they were emoting nicely. So I'm encouraged. It's very, very early days, incredibly early days, but nice debut. I thought it was a perfectly fine young lion debut.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. Like, we're not looking for deep 5-star analysis for what these guys can do. Can they go in the ring? Can they do the basics? Yes. Is this match going to be something that, like, you need to seek this out because their potential is out of this world and it shows that? No, it's nothing like that. This is the beginning of their journey. And if you want to pick 2 guys and say, I'm going to follow their career from point A to point B, this is where you start. And it's a fine start. But other than that, there's not much to this.
And we want to mention very quickly, altogether in Sapporo, the day before had 2,156 people there for it. The only real news, of course, Naito beat Jake Lee again, and we know that's kind of a setup for another chapter in the story on the way to the G1. And other than that, it was what you would expect, with one notable exception. There were mostly New Japan guys beating people from other promotions. That was kind of the theme. Azumi and Starlight Kid had a great match, time limit draw. Those two have great matches, could have great matches in their sleep. Other than that, it was mostly New Japan going over Noah Talent, with one exception, that, of course, Masa Kitamiya finally defeated Tomohiro Ishii after a whole bunch of tries. Finally got his win in the battle. I was
going to say he slayed the dragon, but he's not Shingo.
No, but the battle of doppelgangers, basically, they are each promotion's version of themselves. They are the mirror images of each other there. And Kitamiya finally got a bloody win over Ishii. It took him long enough. He finally got one. But that was the news there from that show. And really, the Azumi and Starlight Kid was probably the best match on it. So there you have it.
All right, before we get out of here, we got a couple of matches, a couple of cards for this next weekend, right?
Yeah, and so we have the week ahead. They were in Aomori on the 18th. They drew about 1,086 people. They drew 1,008 in Iwate on the 19th. These were all preview tags where you just have to look at the lineups and you can figure out who was losing. Like, where's Dick Togo? There's Taka Michinoku. There's, Geto. But, and again, I mentioned the Young Lions went to 2 more 10-minute draws, but nothing of consequence on those. And for the week ahead, we're in Fukushima on Saturday. There's an 8-man tag with LIJ against the House of Torture in the main event, but the newsworthy stuff is Callum Newman versus Yujiro Takahashi and Chase Owens versus Yoshihashi in the qualifying tournaments. Then we'll move on to Ibaraki on Sunday. That one will have Toru Yano against Oleg Bolton and Satoshi Kojima against TJP, and another 8-man tag with LIJ and House of Torture on top. And after that, done until the Korakuen Hall show on Korakuen Hall show on July 3rd. I don't know why I said that. I even had it written down, Korakuen. I said Budokan. But yeah, that's what's going on there. So, and then of course, next week, right here on Speaking of Strong Style, we are going to preview Forbidden Door, which will be on the 30th. So we'll here on Thursday, we'll be doing the Forbidden Door preview, talking about all that. Shingo Takagi on the show, and some matches that look pretty darn great. Should we just run down what the matches are real quick?
So far, what we got the Mina and Toni Storm. We got Mercedes Moné and Stephanie Vaquer for the Strong title / TBS title. We got Orange Cassidy versus Zack Sabre Jr. We have Jon Moxley versus Tetsuya Naito. We do not officially have Bryan Danielson and Shingo Takagi announced, but I do believe it will be at Forbidden Door.
Yeah. The other thing that I looked up on what is expected for this, Zack Sabre Jr. against Orange Cassidy. And I mentioned Jeff Cobb against somebody for the television title, MJF and Hechicero. That'll be interesting. And like you said, we're expecting that Owen Hart tournament match, Shingo Takagi and Bryan Danielson. I don't know if Shingo's going to advance the tournament. Probably not. But Shingo versus Danielson, yes, please. May I have another?
The thing that makes me nervous about Jeff Cobb is I don't know if the people that I want to have a match with them are in programs that allow them to have singles matches.
Okay. So any prediction at all on who comes out for his open challenge?
No, not at this point. I wanted to be Samoa Joe, but he's got stuff going on with Jericho and Hook and Shibata, and I don't know, man. Tony Khan loves Jericho, and he's going to make sure that Jericho has a match on that show more so than he's going to make sure that the TV title gets a singles match.
Yeah. Dunson mentions Leo Rush is probably going to be the New Japan representative for the ladder match. That's what he thinks. So, yeah, and Venkin thinks
I'm going to call him a
Joe...
proxy because he's not really a member of the New Japan roster.
We wish, don't we? In a lot of cases, we do. He's a talented dude. So,
any more comments or anything? Nothing?
Did we answer all of Dunson's questions? Let me get. I feel like there was one that we didn't get to, so I'm going to scan around at the top here and make sure we get one. Do you think it's a waste to bring in Jake Lee instead of other talent like Nakajima or a young guy like Luke Jacobs? Well, Nakajima might not have agreed to do it. We don't know what the story is there, so it's not like they can just go and assign him to it. Luke Jacobs is too young. I mean, Luke Jacobs needs to be in New Japan. I would love to see Luke Jacobs in New Japan, but way too early for Luke to be in the G1.
You cannot do the Luke Jacobs story when you have Bolton Oleg and Callum Newman already there.
Yeah,
sorry, you can't do
just
it.
Not
like you are leapfrogging a story for them by doing it for him.
Yeah, so no, I don't think that's a missed opportunity. Luke Jacobs has a long career ahead of him, and hopefully a lot of that has to do with New Japan. I'm rooting for it, but too early. And also, he says, "Do you think Jake Lee could be joining New Japan after splitting up the good-looking guys? Perhaps." There's no. I mean, sure. If they like him and think it's good.
The landscape is totally open right now. Hey, real quick before we go, like, thumbs up, subscribe, share. If you're listening to the podcast, if you're listening to the audio version, give 5 stars on Apple or whatever podcast catcher. We really appreciate you checking out the show, talking about the G1, all the things, New Japan Pro Wrestling. Steven and I love having these conversations, love having you participate with them. And to have more people join them, it just requires you, the listener, to express feedback that this is something that you like.
Absolutely. And don't forget, folks, Power Bombshells back on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, Dynamite Show, Popcorn and Pile Drivers. I'm leaving some off, but just take a look at all the stuff from Fight Game Media. There's a lot of great stuff on there. But our sibling shows are always worth checking out. So, yeah, with that in mind, Jeremy, anything else before we wrap this one up this week?
No, man, I'm good. How about you?
No, I'm good. So next week we will be talking about what we see this coming weekend. We'll be doing a preview for Forbidden Door. So make sure you join us for that. And that'll be at our normal time next Thursday. So with that in mind, for Jeremy Finestone, I'm Steven Conway. Thanks once again for spending your time with us. Whether you're listening as a podcast or watching us here on YouTube, we are very grateful for you making this possible for us. And we will talk to you again real soon.